the thing that we're looking for is the resources, right? We're looking at how well they trade resources. So like what resources are we looking at? We're looking at like Lucio Amp, we're looking at like a BAP Lamp, Matrix, Rhine Shield, Rhine Health Pool, especially. Got May Wall, May Ice Block, right? Sim TP. So I've got a lot of cooldowns, a lot of resources, yeah? And we're looking at the ways that these teams trade those resources, right? And whenever they lose fights, it's because they haven't traded those resources effectively. And that's the main thing that we're trying to focus on whenever we're looking at Rhine comps, right? Which isn't always the easiest thing to look at when you're kind of looking down from overhead. But there are some ways we can figure it out, right? Because with the Rhine comps, we have a lot of funky places to hide. Because we're kind of brawling together, we're sticking the core together quite a lot. We're not as reliant on line of sight as with dive comps, yeah? Because our Batiste is basically just going to follow us around. Which means that there's a lot of funky positions that we can hide. You know, we can hide here, we could like hide in this room. I don't know if we could get away with like hiding out here, but we could like hide up here on the right. You know, like there's lots of... That's the kind of way that Rhine comps are going to play on defense. They're going to try and take like funny positions a lot of the time, burst out with ults. If they get value with the ult, with the May Wolves, then they'll carry on pushing. If they don't, then they can still back up and take another fight, right? Now, the interesting thing is the way that these defending teams set up those aggressive ultimates, and also the way that attacking teams have to push into that type of hold, right? Because the attacking teams have to kind of be ready at a moment's notice to immediately run away and disengage, yeah? So attacking teams, they're actually going to come in quite slowly. They're going to kind of tease forward, try and like bait the enemy team to come in and fight, right? While being ready to disengage. They will get a point where they're kind of too far committed to do that. So like kind of once they get past this position here, it's kind of tough for them to disengage, assuming that Fuel are kind of playing at the back. So once you get to kind of this position, that's when we start to see Justice kind of do funky things to break the chokes, and that's gonna be what we try and focus on today. Yeah. So again, Fuel here, coming up to the window. The way we're using window in this comp is basically just to help us engage, help us with the default. We're not really bothered about how much we actually get with the window, but any little damage from Batiste in the back, any like boosted healing onto our Rhine, again, it's going to mean our BAP can focus more on damage, right? If we're healing our Rhine super quick. So we're going to see Fuel stack up. I don't know if they can see the Rhine shield, they can't. They're going to try and burst out, see if they can get a kill with the BAP window. Again, they're pushing at the same time. We can see the way it does actually interrupt like the Sim TP from Justice, and again, this is how we want Fuel to play, right? Like they don't get lucky this time with the wall, with the boot, that type of stuff, but we know that that's the way that they want to play, right? And again, I'm not going to go too hard on the specifics of the micro in terms of Justice and how they don't get caught here. The only thing I'm going to talk about is that the mindset that they have when they come in is understanding that they're very, very likely going to get engaged on in this area, right? And if they understand that an enemy engage is probably going to come in this area as they try and push in, because what Fuel really don't want is for the attacking team to kind of get to a position like this one on the corner for free, where they can just kind of set up and clear the point using range spam. Because again, we know that the attacking team typically has the advantage in terms of that little range spam battle, right? Because they can come to this corner, peek in and out of cover, spam kind of for free, whereas because the defending team is, well, defending, they've kind of got to stay on their positions. They've got to take damage, right? Which means the attacking team tends to have the value, or sorry, tends to kind of trade resources better in that type of spam war, right? So Fuel, they don't want to do that, right? They want to find a way to interrupt Justice from getting to a position for free and then clearing the point through range spam, right? So that's what they don't want, because they want to keep control of as much kind of map as possible. And again, they're going to kind of trade that map for these opportunities to push. So they take this little push, it doesn't work. Now we're going to see them start to fall back a little bit, yeah? Again, it's fine, they need to go for this, and even if it doesn't work, every single time they go for it, all they're doing is they're trading resources, they're building ults as well when they go for it, so like it's not, even though this doesn't quite work, it's not really that bad. The bad thing is Doha gets caught here. I don't fully know why, but he should have had a chance. As soon as the wall didn't work out, he should have backed up, right? So like, as soon as he saw we didn't get the May wall, he should understand that, right, we didn't get a kill with the May wall, we pushed the enemy team back, we're starting to run out of cooldowns as well, right? Because we'd been fighting for like a few seconds when we pushed in, and again, whenever the Rhine comp is pushing, runs out of cooldowns very, very quickly. Yeah, as soon as that May wall's gone down, that's basically it. There's no more cooldowns for the Rhine, so the Rhine comp has got to start backing up. Doha was a little bit late, right? So we saw him get stuck in this May Ice block here, which then meant he had to back up this way. The peel has kind of gotten to him a little bit late, which means that now Lamp's been forced out, so on and so on. So we haven't actually traded resources very well in this area. Yeah. And again, I know Reinkomp's not like the most interesting to talk about in terms of the resource trades, but we're gonna kind of go slow at the start and then talk about more of the alt stuff later on, right? Still, again, not the worst position for Fuel to be in, right? If they use Symbol right now, yeah. However, we kind of see this late Symbol, we see it going kind of the wrong way too. So again, like a pretty universal concept, but the way that we're trying to use Symbol, we're trying to split the enemy team, we're trying to kind of distract the enemy team, we're trying to make it difficult for the backline to support the front line, right? Which you might think, like, sure, putting a Symbol like this is good, because then it means the enemy Rein can't, like, walk forward. But it's always, well, I say always, it's typically always better to just pull it through the enemy team, right? If we do it like this, then like the whole team's got to make a decision which side of the wall to play on. And that is usually more awkward than deciding whether to push through a wall or go behind a wall, yeah? Again, it kind of introduces a lot more confusion into the enemy team if we're pulling a wall like this. And it also means that our team can actually push up on it, right? Because the problem that we have is that if now our Rein wants to push through, he has no shield, right? He has no Symbol, yeah? Whereas if the Symbol is going this way, kind of where the blue line is, then our Rein can kind of do this type of thing to avoid the majority of the enemy damage that's on this side, and then he can kind of weave in and out of it, right? So I assume this is just like a fat finger from, well, not a fat finger, but just kind of a mistake from Sparkle to pull it this way, right? He also kind of pulled it a little bit too late because we can see that Fearless has already taken a lot of damage, right? Doesn't seem like that much, but we don't want any of that damage to get taken. Yeah. I want us to first look at the way that Doha gets caught, right? And because Doha gets caught here, this is the reason why Dallas don't trade resources too well, right? So at this stage, Doha still has a chance to get out. But why he's running in and trying to commit for these freezes, I'm not sure. Yeah? Like, what we see this quite a lot from Fuel on these early maps. Like, when they're engaging, they're going straight in. They're not really embracing the Rein comp as a comp that kind of just trades resources. If you have a good resource trade, you can still back up and just go back in, right? So, like, we're hopefully trying to see these uptime, downtime cycles a little bit more from Fuel. I don't know, like, I don't really care where it goes as long as it comes out now, right? You know, he can come up to this angle, then pull it, that's okay, but it has to come out very, very quick, because we don't want to take any unnecessary damage. We also want to kind of, like, push up on it immediately and force the enemy team back if we can. You know, we don't want to allow them to spread out and start taking the angles on us as we come out here, because I think what we see, actually, is, I think we see Decay. No, we see, we see Assassin kind of make it to this pillar here, and then he starts playing around the pillar. I think the D.Va actually comes around and helps him in a minute too. If Sparkle was a little bit quicker, maybe that wouldn't happen, right? And again, these little angles, typically when we're talking about angles with the Rein comp, yeah, okay, sometimes we see like the Kree, like Kree Mei. In that case, yes, sometimes we have like the Kree committing on the angle, we have that type of playstyle. But in these types of comps where we're playing Sim, we don't usually see that type of angle creation. We don't see kind of range spam at the back. So when we're talking about angles, we're not really talking about angles that we're just taking using our default cooldowns to take damage. When we're thinking about angles, we're actually thinking about the way that ultimates allow us to take angles, right? So instead of just trying to run and get kills with the ultimates, often we're using the ultimates to allow us to take the angle we need. One of the main angles for this comp here is the Mei being in a position where she can have freeze threat on the enemy team, right? And also the Sim, as we're probably going to see in a minute, when she TPs behind, that's kind of the other type of angle, right? We'll talk about that a little bit more in a sec. So we're using ultimates a lot of the time to open angles for us, because Sparkle's a little bit slow. We don't really have the opportunity to take that angle. We see that Assassin was able to get on point. There's a lot of freeze threat he's got here. Yes, he does get contested, but we can imagine that if Assassin wasn't on this position, it's actually very difficult for Justice to kind of start to retake this fight, right? Because these players here would be comfortable walking up. Doubly so if their Symbol was actually going in this direction. Yeah, we can imagine these players, you know, both kind of red circles, would be very comfortable walking up, right? The other thing I want to draw attention to here is that, yes, again, these Rein comps very, very reliant on their uptime cycles, right? And again, by these uptime cycles, we're talking about when they're pushing in using speed boost, using Matrix, using Rein Shield, using Maywall a lot of the time, using their kind of opening ultimates as well, right? So they went in with Shatter, they went in with Symbol, right? So those things are kind of running out. Those cooldowns are running out, the ultimates are running out, and they haven't really got enough value during that time, right? What we're about to see from Decay, and Decay does this a lot, and the timing that he goes for it is always super, super good. Once Fuel start to go into that downtime is when we see Decay commit with these kind of funny TPs, right? And again, this is the perfect timing to go for this, right? If the enemy team had cooldowns, and again, we talk a lot about attention too, yeah? We talk about how at the start of a fight, the team has a certain amount of attention. When they push in, everyone's focused on the same goal, right? Everyone kind of sees the same people in front of them. They're shooting the same person. If there was a target call, let's say we got an opening shatter, we can imagine whoever got shattered would die pretty much instantly, yeah? Because everyone's got cooldowns, but especially everyone has attention. They're not kind of distracted by 3 or 4 different things. However, after those kind of first uptime cycles and we start to go into our downtime, now everyone's kind of distracted by different things, right? Because we're having these little duels on the flank. D.Va's kind of seeing all these players over here. She's kind of thinking about that. The Ryan's kind of turning around because he's like, I think he hears this TP. You know, like we're not, everyone's kind of distracted by different things. Everyone has different amounts of information and everyone's kind of thinking about different things, right? Which is the other thing we've got to make sure we remember when we talk about downtime. Yeah, is that it's not just about the cooldowns, it's also about the attention that the team has to spare. Because the attention the team has to spare is what decides whether they can react to developments in the fight. Developments like a Sim TPing into your backline, yeah? Because we can see what happens when he actually goes to this TP. And again, he's doing it when Fuel don't have the cooldowns, don't have the attention to react to it. He's coming in. He's getting a really nice flank onto Sparkle. At the same time, Justice are pushing in, because remember, they didn't use a whole lot of cooldowns when Fuel came in. Justice just kind of backed up, let Fuel use the cooldowns. Then once Fuel had no cooldowns, we saw the TP, and then we saw the push, right? So remember this playstyle, because we're going to see it quite a lot, yeah? And we see it a lot, especially for the attack, when Justice are playing without much space to begin with. They're coming in, they're baiting Fuel, I'll do them in blue, into pushing. Once Fuel start to push, we see Justice kind of back up a little bit, and then once Fuel run out of cooldowns, we see a funky TP in the back line as the team pushes forward using the cooldowns, right? So we see a really, really good understanding of the kind of uptime, downtime cycle from Justice in this first fight, yeah? So again, the main things that we're focusing on with these comps is the ways that they take space, right? So we're not too happy with the way Justice is playing this defense, because we would rather that they put some pressure on kind of in this area if possible. They don't have to commit to it too much, but if they put on a little bit of pressure, they can force some ults, build some of their ults that they don't have. Maybe they get a kill, maybe they get lucky, right? We're also slowing down the enemy, so we're trading our kind of point percentage quite well, because it's taking the enemy team longer to get to point. Basically no reason not to look for an early fight, right? You don't have to commit to it too much, but you will get options if you play close. You can try and surprise them with a mail. If it doesn't work, you're going for it in a way that means you can still get out taken at the fight, right? Now, I want to draw attention to here the way that teams can use SimTP, and the kind of reason why we saw Fuel take the fight early on. So we talked, just when Fuel took the early fight, how they didn't want to allow Justice to get to a position where they could use kind of range LOS to clear the point. This is what we're going to see from Fuel, yeah? They take this TP, they follow up with a back window, and now they're in a really good position to clear point using their range spam. Yeah. And I don't know, it's pretty simple, right? Like they take the TP because Justice didn't take like a more aggressive push at the start. They didn't try and static fight here, force out some cooldowns. It means that Fuel have the freedom to go for this type of thing, clear this space using the back window. I don't really know what Fuel do at this point. Like, I think Fuel were very, very slow to warm up in this match, which is why we see a lot of these mistakes. But like, I don't know. I don't know why we're kind of come around like this, different directions. I don't know why we're not kind of immediately following up with, like, once we get here, we should speed boost forward. Like, once the enemy team start to back up, immediately follow up with, like, probably mail first, and then sound barrier afterwards if we need to, you know? Like, I don't know what they're doing here. I don't know why they're spreading out. I don't know why they're playing slowly. I don't know what position these guys are trying to get into, like working their way around. The Mei wall was good, yes, but we should also see Fuel kind of playing a little bit closer together. They shouldn't be allowing themselves to get split up like this. Being outside of the comms, it's kind of difficult to find something to say about it, but the fight just devolves into kind of complete chaos. Yeah, and it means that even though we have the opening space from Fuel, we don't really kind of transfer it into anything, because again, like the only reason that we want space is so that we're able to kind of push up onto people and use it and kill them. Yeah, and again, we can imagine with the space that we have, enemy team starts to back up. We have this opportunity here. We even get the Mei wall first, so I don't know why we're not committing harder. I don't know why we're not, like, we can push onto this with sound barrier if we want to right now. Yeah, we can. Like I understand why we wouldn't want to like Mei wall straight away, or sorry, Mei ult straight away, but like we have the opportunities to push forward, right? So I don't know. Not being in the comms, it's difficult to say why. Yeah, and again, like I know the enemy team have ults, I know they have Mei ult, I know they have sound barrier, but we still want to use those aggressively. We don't want to have our sound barrier get used while our Rein and Mei are starting to back up and while two of our players are shattered. We want to use our sound barrier in a way that allows the team to play confidently. Yeah? Because again, if we play confidently, then the enemy team use ults here, we can still use sound barrier and get out, and we still have these positions. Yeah? But because we were playing slowly, it meant that when the enemy team used ults, they were actually using them kind of in this blue area. Yeah? Rather than in the yellow area, which is where we'd want them to use them. Right? Seeing an aggressive play, we don't see it work out. I'd rather see the sim wall come out like now. Right? Because again, we want to give our team an opportunity to close distance while reserving their kind of personal cooldowns. This is what we talk about with the ults, right? And this is kind of what I was trying to say when we're talking about how with the Rein comp, especially when we don't have like a Kree, a lot of the time we're using ults to allow us to take angles, right? Because no one in this comp is usually that confident, kind of taking an angle, pushing deep, you know, getting super aggressive, right? So we're using ultimates to allow ourselves to do that. You know, if we have a sound barrier, everyone's happy running in. If we have a sim wall, everyone's happy running in, right? The other thing as well is, for these players to fight, for these players to kill things on the enemy team, they need their personal cooldowns. Mei, she needs her wall, she needs her ice block. If she doesn't have them, she's not going to be confident running in, right? Symmetra needs her health pool. If she doesn't have full health, she's not going to be confident running in. Same for Rein. If he doesn't have full shield, he's not going to be confident going in swinging. Same for Fury, right? If Fury has to use his matrix while he's closing distance, then he's not going to be as confident once he actually gets to the fight. He's not going to be able to commit as hard, yeah? Which is the reason why we want to use our ults early, so we can get to the enemy team while still having these cooldowns, yeah? And again, that's kind of the most critical thing about these kind of Rein comps, right? We're not using all our cooldowns, then pulling our ults afterwards, because even if we have the ults, even if we had a sound barrier, right? And if we had a sound barrier and no kind of standard cooldowns, we wouldn't be able to do anything with it, right? So we've got to make sure that we're kind of using the ults to allow us to close distance, allow us to fight, right? Which is, again, why I don't really like that the sim wall comes out a little bit later. It doesn't matter if we don't win the fight with the sim wall. If we skirmish here, waste, 10, 20 seconds, build a bunch of our own ults, that's still a good trade, yeah? Yeah, okay, we just see an unlucky punch from Assassin. This is the type of angle he shouldn't really be. I mean, the angle's fine, but he should just be aware of the Doom. But again, that is the type of power that the Doom has in these comps. I like these old SimTPs, and again, we'll see this a lot with. We don't really see conditioning a whole lot in Overwatch, where we'll do the kind of same thing a few fights in a row, and then kind of switch it up after a second fight or a third fight to kind of confuse the enemy. The only times we really see that is with rotations with Rein comps, right? So when Rein comps are rotating in, they have a few different things they can do. They can kind of, speed boost left side, speed boost right side, speed boost main. They can sim TP behind. That's kind of the options that they have, right? And again, this is kind of for every map. They can kind of pick and choose which one they do, and they can also bait the enemy team into thinking that they're going to do one of those things. They might start going right side, then they'll turn around and come out main. Maybe they wouldn't do that on this map, but you see what I'm saying, yeah? So this is kind of the only real comp that we see conditioning actually mean something, which is the reason why we see these kind of just fake TPs at the start of the fight, right? Any distraction we can make, the enemy team shooting our teleport while we're rotating in, is going to make things much easier for us, yeah? But it seems like they're just walking in and just like taking the damage the enemy team's thrown at them and not like either not expecting it or not because what's actually happening here, they're taking the opening ult and like they're very, very close to everything of their own, right? They're very, very close. Like they're almost at beat, they're almost at shadow, they're almost at mail, almost at window. Like they have a lot of ults here. Yeah, okay, they're forced to touch point 97. That's fine. But the Mei's got it kind of handled. Why would you then want to just come out main and start the fight in main, right? Like, do you have no opportunity to kind of push top left, take a fight? Like, do you want to spend the whole fight sitting here? I don't know. It's difficult for me to really say much about this when they're just kind of opening main slowly, allowing Sparkle to come in, take the slam. Then we're grouping up and we're kind of pushing with beat, but then we don't actually push onto anything with the sound barrier. This is kind of my issue here. Is that we pull the sound barrier, but then we don't make a commitment. Like we should probably be making a commitment in this direction. Sorry. In this direction as soon as the sound barrier comes out. Like we kind of find the D.Va, but then also we're seeing Assassin go into his ice block at the same time. I don't know. I don't like this. I don't really like what I'm saying about this either. It's just like there's just nothing happening from them. Like I'm not crazy about their comp. Like I think if they do make you, sorry, if they do go Doom, then like you have the chance to swap. Mei TPing to point is fine, but like Justice should have called as they pushed in, or like sorry, Closer should be calling that he's so close to sound barrier. The team should be saving cooldowns for it, and I'm pretty sure they are, right? Comes in, we use the amp, we build the sound barrier, we swap to speed. Like what? But they're not ready for it. Right? This is what's confused me, right? Like this is what I'm kind of struggling with because it just they're not ready for it. They're not ready for a sound barrier to come in. If these players were ready for a sound barrier to come in, Fearless would be dead. You know? Like we have the Mei angle, we have the Lucio coming in, you can even get a boop on him further in. If these players were ready to push, ready to punish, then Fearless would get caught. So this is what I don't understand. So we're seeing like the opening from Justice is okay because they're coming in at a kind of wide angle, which means that, and they did have someone watching this area here, right? So which is fine. So we're kind of happy with that because and we also had the Mei TP on point, right? So what this means is an enemy engage coming in can only really come from kind of one direction, right? Which means that even though they have a Doomfist coming in, we should be pretty comfortable surviving it, right? I'm with them there. I agree with that. That's fine. But then what do we do once we get into this position, right? The kind of two options we have is either we kind of play like we are to sustain versus a dive that's coming from, an engage that's coming from just one direction. Because it's coming from one direction, we should be able to trade resources pretty effectively in the sense that we're still going to have cooldowns, still going to have ultimates to then counter push and take the space during the enemy downtime, right? So the thing that Justice did really, really well the fight a few fights ago, when Fuel comes in, uses cooldowns. Again, we've seen the Doom come in. He's now out. He's now all the way over here, right? We've seen the Rein come in, start fighting. He's used his shield. He's now, like 300 health? Not even, right? We've seen the symbol. We've seen the back window came out. He's going to run out pretty soon, right? We have this opportunity to push. We've pulled back. We haven't used basically any cooldowns apart from like Lucio Amp and like BAP Shift. So like we basically have full cooldowns. And we're like amping speed right now as well. Why are we not using the sound barrier to push forward? I don't know. It's like if we were going to play a Rein comp, we can't get this wrong. It's not like a complicated concept. It's pushing during your uptime, kiting back during your downtime. When you're attacking, you're allowing the enemy team to play aggressive during their uptime. You're rotating first in a way that means if the enemy team come in kind of early, which is kind of what they did with the Doomfist when Sparkle went in, it means their engages come from one direction. They don't have like a sneaky player here, you know, they don't have an off angle here. I know the D.Va's here, that doesn't really count. Like bear in mind we had the Mei on point as well. So like we're starting the fight fine, but then we're not using our uptime. We're not using the enemy downtime to push. Yeah. So I don't know, just sad from really, and they want to sit at the back, and I don't know. Yeah. Like it would be better if we pushed onto Fearless. Maybe we get something with Fearless. Then maybe we rotate up top. Use our back window here, you know, just clear this player here. We have the options if we take the push, right? The decisions our players make if they take that push will just be obvious. I'm not sure. And again, the only reason that Harbin's able to get a D.Va bomb, right, is because we're still in the same position for 20 seconds straight, right? If we're moving around constantly, using our uptime, sorry, to run around, take advantage, then there's no way Harbin gets a good D.Va bomb. It's only because we've been sitting in the same position for 10 seconds that Harbin's able to get one that kind of hits here, falls down, gets a kill. Yeah. We don't use our uptime. And again, like that's the way that we're kind of attacking when we're playing this rank comp, right? We're coming in, letting the enemy team come in, letting the enemy team use resources. Once they've used those resources and we've kind of survived, then we're pushing deep. We're chasing the advantage. We're using that little time window to take as much map control as we can, or get as much of an advantage as we can. Right? This fight, we didn't see Justice do that, so they kind of just got blown up. Let's have a look. Let's see how they play. Again, what are we remembering here? We're remembering that Fuel are playing on the attack, which means they're not starting with space, right? They're not starting with any control, which means that it's difficult for them to kind of find positions to stabilize in. If we're the team that's starting with a bunch of space, a bunch of control, then it's easy for us to play aggressive because we still have space that we can use to fall back, right? So there's a little bit more to it than that, because obviously, like when we're attacking, we also have space to fall back. But it just kind of means like when we're attacking, we're not expecting to be able to push and kind of win straight away. Yeah, we need to kind of get some sort of advantage first. We need to kind of burn some enemy resources, maybe get one of our DPS or one of our players into a nice position on the flank. Then once we burn some resources and we're in a decent position, then we can push, right? I know we don't have any players that would like properly play on the flank. So we're mostly thinking about resources, right? We're mostly trying to burn some resources, then push in once the enemy team don't have as many resources, and then through that, we're going to be able to try and kind of win a fight, right? So we see this MTP, we see the Doom coming with a punch. I think, I don't know if Jexay means to come through here. I think he gets like booped out. I'm not crazy about Jexay coming through. The Doom engage is very good though, right? Like this little TP with the slam, perfect, right? Like very happy with this. Because what does it do? It creates an opening for the rest of the team to come up and start to skirmish, right? We're probably not going to see a full commitment from Fuel at this point. We wouldn't really want to either, because we've had to use a bunch of like cooldowns resources to get to this stage where we're kind of skirmishing, fighting, right? If all we do with this engage is make a little opening, force out, again, what have we done? We forced out a bunch of Matrix, we forced out back window. I imagine Lamp is going to follow pretty soon. Maybe we force out some Mei cooldowns, break some Rein Shield. You can imagine the way that this type of engage is actually, it trades very efficiently for the Doom team, right? Because all that we're really using is a few Doom cooldowns, which don't even last that long, right? You know what you're looking at, like maybe like 6-7 seconds on average. Yeah. So we're actually very happy with this engage if we're Fuel, because we're forcing out a lot, we're forcing out quite a big response just for sending a Doomfist in. So we can imagine if we send the Doomfist in, he does this, then backs out to the team. Then we go in the second time. That second time we go in, they don't have Lamp. They don't have as much Matrix. They don't have as much health, right? Maybe we forced out Ice Block as well, right? Forced out Lucio Amp too, right? So it means that that second engage we can get a lot of value out of, right? But it's not what we see, because we see our Lucio and our D.Va just running on point and try and close out the fight straight away. I don't know what we're looking at here. I don't know what we are expecting. Like our Lucio gets out, which is fine. A little bit risky for him to go in the first place, but what is Harbin looking for? I'm not sure. Is it like, if anyone's got any ideas here, let me know, because this one's one that I don't really understand. Because the Doom comes in to make the space, and we can imagine the way that we'd want our D.Va to play is actually to stay here on this corner, where she can shoot, and then help our Doom get out with Matrix. Again, we talk about this all the time, right? The way that we see D.Vas play, ideally, isn't like, yeah, okay, if she has the chance to go and fly and kill someone, she should go for it. But even if we flew onto the sim now, we could still fly away, and then Matrix our Doom out, right? That's the way that we'd want to see the sim. And like even when we commit onto this Batiste, I don't know why Harbin doesn't understand that the rest of the team probably isn't going to go for a full commitment. Yes, we see a really nice Mei wall from Assassin, but the team should kind of understand it's very tough to kind of push in these doorways on the first engage. Like we're happy to take this engage with Sparkle. He comes back, we heal up a tiny bit, and then we're pushing with Sparkle only in like 5 seconds time, you know, because his cooldowns aren't that long. It's not going to take long to heal him. So I don't know why we see such like a full commitment on the first engage. Like Fuel are just kind of sending, just literally just sending it and expecting to win these fights. Yeah, they're not kind of respecting any form of default playstyle, right? Which again, obviously, if they think they're great, they think they can just win by going in. Fine, whatever, don't really care. But again, like they're not, you know, they're quite clearly not winning when they just run straight in, right? So I don't know why we see Hanbin take this angle. Again, we see our Doomfist die, right? We see our Doomfist die because our D.Va goes deep. Had our D.Va been back, we save the Doom, we heal up, and then we're engaging. Not even that long, you know, just like 3-4 seconds time, we're pushing in, right? After having forced out all those cooldowns. After having got that opening kill, even. Yeah. So very, very poor from Hanbin here. Like, again, I don't want to say it's just his fault, but again, once the Doomfist dead, there's not really a whole lot we can do. So backing up, absolutely fine. But yeah, that's the type of playstyle that we want to see from Fuel on the attack. We want to see maybe the Doom going in, going through one cooldown cycle, you know, kind of slam, uppercut, punch, gets out, right? Again, very happy with that. Then it's only going to take a few seconds before the team's ready to push in. And we're hoping that we forced out enough enemy resources during that first engage, maybe even got a kill, forced lamp maybe, that type of stuff, that we're then able to kind of push deep, right? That distraction the Doomfist makes as well also allows our team to kind of approach without getting ulted, yeah? Which means that if enemy ults come out, they tend to come out kind of in this area rather than in this area, yeah? Which, once again, means that our team has a much easier chance disengaging from them, right? So that's what we want to see Fuel do. We don't want to see them just kind of send it every time. Again, we want them instead to be using their ultimates to kind of close distance, right? Then fighting after that, and they've done that really well in the past. Or we want them to be kind of skirmishing with the Doomfist, and then using the kind of distraction made by the Doomfist to push, not necessarily exactly when the Doomfist goes in, but kind of like a couple seconds afterwards would be better, right? We can imagine the way that Tracer sometimes plays versus Dive Heroes, right? Where the Tracer actually comes in, skirmishes with the supports, maybe forces out a flashbang, a brig bash, an Ananade, that type of thing. And then as soon as that's happened, as soon as those cooldowns have been forced, we then see like a Wrecking Ball come in, right? Or a Monkey come in, right? Again, it doesn't happen too much with Tracer anymore, but that is something Tracer used to do quite a lot, yeah? So Doomfist can do the same. He can come in, force the cooldowns, disengage, then the rest of the team can push in once those cooldowns have been forced. That's what we'd want to see Fuel do, but instead we're just kind of seeing them run in, right? The other thing as well is it's very, very, very telegraphed, yeah? Because they've done this type of playstyle and they've done it a few fights in a row, it's so telegraphed that we see Justice, they actually spot the opportunity to take an aggressive push, and this is probably one of the best things I've actually seen Justice do so far in like any of their matches I've watched, right? They know that Fuel are looking just to kind of take this TP and send it. So what they're saying is that as soon as Justice kind of as soon as Fuel get to this area, they're probably going to go for the TP. As soon as they see that happen, as soon as they see the TP, we see Justice actually take an aggressive push, right? Why is this so good? Not just because it interrupts the kind of default cycle of Fuel, where Fuel are TPing up, slamming in, whatever, right? Not only because it interrupts that cycle, but also because look at the ults from Justice. What do they not have? No sound barrier, no Mei wall, no sim wall, right? Sorry, no Mei Blizzard, no sim wall, right? And these are the three biggest ultimates for the team. They're lacking their big ultimates, whereas look at Fuel. They have basically all three, sorry. They have basically kind of all of them, right? So this is a perfect fight to go for a disruptive play, yeah? The ult economy means that it's perfect to go for this disruptive play for this fight specifically. Because if we play like this, we can get a lot of value out of our default. And it means we can, even if we lose the fight, at least we're forcing out a lot of ults because we're playing in a kind of chaotic way. Yeah, so we're very happy with this push from Justice, right? And it works really well. We find Doha. Looks like we find Fearless as well, maybe? No? But still, like, it's a very comfortable position for... Well, okay, really sad we lose 2 to that D.Va Bomb. That shouldn't really happen. But we might still be able to just push in and win the fight. But again, really, really nice fight from Justice. We'll watch that just quick afterwards anyway. It looks like they might actually lose this one. No? Ooh. Oh! Nice. Okay, good job. Yeah. We're seeing... What are we seeing? We're seeing Justice understand both the way that Fuel are playing, is in Fuel are just kind of coming in, sending it with the TP and the Doomfist. They also understand that they don't have the ultimates to take a kind of honorable 6v6. So instead of waiting on point and taking that kind of honorable duel where both teams just kind of run into each other, they're disrupting it, right? They're going at an awkward time for the enemy team and they are sending it. Yeah, I know we talked about how Fuel, when they're sending it, not that great, but because of the timing of Justice, they're doing it in a way that's kind of disrupting the enemy cycle, then it's good. And also because they don't have the ults, another reason it's good. Yeah. So, wait, I need to get that playing. And we can see how well it works out, right? We're pushing in, we catch Doha straight away, and even though it's kind of messy fight, this is the type of fight that we want if we're the team without as many ults, right? Because it gives us more of a chance to kind of catch individual players out, as well as more of a chance to force enemy ults. Yeah, you see the way we forced so many ults out of Fuel, and Fuel, until that D.Va Bomb came in and got those 2 kills, which honestly was kind of lucky. Fuel didn't have anything. Yeah, they had absolutely nothing, right? So we see the way that we've kind of defeated the ult disadvantage by playing in a disruptive way. So again, we see a nice little rollout here from Fuel actually. You know, we see they definitely plan these rollouts better than Justice have, because we see Armbin kind of take the speed boost here, use it to get up and like onto this position here, and he uses this position to kind of make space for his team, which enables his Rein to play aggressively onto the kind of little statue thing here. And also we're looking at this kind of little 3-man split that we've got. So we have a nice little kind of 3-man split on the rollout from Fuel. We don't always see this with this comp, because honestly there's not actually that many situations where we would see it, or sorry, where it's really that useful outside of this first fight situation. Yeah, because it's first fight, we have no ults. We don't really have any ults that we're trying to play around. So we're trying to search for just kind of default that we can play around when we have no ults. One of the easiest ones to do is put the Lucio and Mei on a flank. They can speed boost round. The Rein, being under pressure of getting frozen, is going to have to start walking back. Yeah. And if the Rein starts to walk back, then our team has an easy time pushing forward. That's kind of mostly what happens, right? Typically, obviously, Justice are going to have players on the flank, which are then going to be put under the threat of Mei Wolves, Mei Freezes, that type of stuff. So it's kind of those two things, right? Either we're catching players on the flank, or we're threatening the Rein and making the Rein come back, right? So that's why we see these kind of 3-man pushes, and it's a really good way of playing these opening fights. However, and I remember seeing this, I can't remember if I saw this live, but we see this kind of nice push here, and we're still very happy with it. We've got a lot of space in main. You know, Sparkle's here, free farming on Sim. It's going really well so far. And then for some reason, we see Jexay just overcommit on this wall. Sitting here, fighting, and it just dies. He just sits here till he dies. And I don't know. I don't know what to say about it, you know? Like, I'm not, I haven't figured that one out, right? Like, it's not, he just sits there and he dies. Like, I don't know if he's just not expecting to take damage or what. But then what we see in response, and this is the kind of interesting bit, is that even though Justice had been kind of pushed back, like, so this kill on Jexay, like, it's bad, but it's not like the end of the world, right? Because we have kind of fairly decent positions. Obviously, we don't have the Lucio, but the enemy Rein, he's 1 health. The lamp's already come out. We're not in the worst position in the world, right? If we carried on pushing, carried on forcing the enemy team back, carried on pushing our Mei, maybe we clear these DPS here, right? Then we still stand an okay chance, right? Because our Sim's happy, our Rein's happy, our Bap's happy. Basically, if we can clear these DPS, we're in a fairly good position. I'm pretty sure Doha's, Doha's already had his Icicle forced, whereas Assassin hasn't, and that's pretty critical here. So it's going to be tough for Doha to kind of win this little skirmish on the flank, because he's already had to use his Ice Block, yeah? But the thing I want to focus on is what Decay does, right? In that we see again, Fuel taking opening space, Fuel forcing Justice to go back, and Justice being fairly happy to give them that space, right? Then in response, once Fuel's cooldowns start to run out, again, we can see D.Va, half health, Doha, no Ice Block, Rein, he's kind of going and swinging, so he's going to have to back up in a couple seconds. We're then seeing another fantastic TP from Decay, right? In that, He's waiting for the enemy team to use their resources, waiting for the enemy team to commit to aggressive positions. Then once their cooldowns start to run out and his team starts to stabilize, he's taking the TP, which is either going to get him kills or net enough of a distraction for his team to use that uptime and push in. Right, so we see a really nice opening TP from Decay here. And again, huge amount of pressure he's putting on here, forcing the Rein to go back. Loads of damage on the Baptiste. We get the kill on the Baptiste, right? So even though we had some issues with Jekse dying, mostly we're focusing on the way that Justice are playing once they start to lose space. They're happy to give that space up. And once the enemy team, once Fuel have started to kind of use all their cooldowns in this area, we're then seeing Decay commit with the Sim TP. And this is kind of one of the best ways to use TP, right? It's kind of similar to, in the Lucio Mora stuff, when we see the Reaper TPing to punish an enemy disengage, right? We can imagine if Decay was on Reaper instead, this is kind of when he'd want to TP, because his team's backing up, then his team's ready to push in. So a Reaper would kind of do the same TP, where he gets behind the BAP, starts shooting him as his team's pushing in, right? Like that's the type of thing that we're looking for. Because this team's pushing in, at the same time, a Sombra who's invisible, so doesn't care about the fact that she's by herself, is setting up to try and get a hack on an enemy as the team's pushing in. It's a good comp. It can work very well versus this, right? This comp is theoretically better, right? And I would rather play this comp. There's more you can do with this comp, yada yada. But this comp is a good comp. And playing inside a room is not necessarily a bad decision for this comp. That's where they want to play. This isn't a brain-dead rush comp that's rushing in and fighting. This is a comp that's actually very, very measured. They have to walk forward. They have to skirmish. Then they have to back up. They have to kind of repeat that process until they get a hack they can commit on, or they build the ult that they can full dive with. We've talked about it a lot. Anyone that's watched any of this will know exactly what I'm talking about, right? But we still have people today thinking that this is just some like brain-dead rush comp that goes down main. That's not how this works. They have to take very kind of smart rotation, smart pathing into positions where they can force a point, and they have to be very intelligent about matching the timings with their Sombra to get the hacks, to push out with the ultimates. And remember, final thing as well, they're playing it as if it's a kind of disengaged comp. They're not full sending it with every cooldown when they're walking forward. They're making space just by kind of brawling, by walking forward with Monkey Bubble, with the Sound Barrier, with the Speed Boost, with the Matrix. Then, once they use their cooldowns, they can either commit with the jumps, or they can disengage, right? So that's the way that they're using their cooldowns, the way they're using their mobility. It's not just a brain-dead rush comp, right? Now, the way that Fuel have to counter it, again, we saw Outlaws try and do it the other week, but not really succeed. They have to do two things. They have to punish enemy DPS when they're playing outside of the main core, right? We don't have a Tracer in this situation, so it's going to be kind of difficult. So mostly we're going to be thinking about the ways that we can disrupt the enemy rotations, right? And when we talk about disrupting the rotations, we're talking about the enemy team's kind of default cycle, right? And again, the default cycle is coming in, stabilizing in these positions, closing distance across the map, getting into a position where they can force point, then rushing on to stuff, right? So again, there's a lot that actually goes into this comp before they get to the position where they would even want to rush onto something, okay? So we're looking at the ways that Fuel tries to disrupt that cycle. One of the main ways, as we're going to see in a second, I think, is by our players just kind of playing aggressively, not allowing Justice to take these types of rotations, yeah? So we see this kind of little boot from Fearless here. It goes to the power drive. Again, very good. We see the fade full start from the Moira. Obviously, at the same time, we are seeing Assassin here kind of uncloak, go for this hack. This is what Assassin's going to be going for. We can imagine if they get the hack on the Tracer, it's then very easy for this team just kind of walk forward and kill the Tracer, right? So this is the way that the Lucio Mora comp's trying to play. They don't just kind of win fights by hacks randomly. The hacks, the main way they win fights, that's what their win condition is. Or sorry, not win condition, I can't believe I just said that. But that's one of their main, that's what their kind of main solution is, right? Is kind of walking in, getting to a strong position, and then pushing out at the same time as their Sombra goes for a hack, right? That's what we see this comp do pretty much all the time. The thing I don't like is how far back the supports are playing, right? The supports cannot allow Justice to take these types of opening rotations, especially this first one here is a very good position to contest it, right? Because we have a ball getting a good slam. We've scouted the enemy comp. We pretty much know they're going to play this anyway because Justice have been playing everywhere else. Why is Fields so far back? Yeah, I know Depay talked about this the other day from Crimso's perspective. Exactly the same situation here. Yeah, we need to be close. If our Brig, you know, up here, Zen up here, we're in a position to drop and fight onto this Moira once we know she hasn't got a fade. Yeah, and that we can afford to do that if the enemy team doesn't have cooldowns. Yeah, we are only scared of fighting this team when they have cooldowns. But what do we see? We see Fielder go in, sorry, not Fear. We see Fearless go in, take the slam, right? What do we see here? We see a Moira Orb, we see a Moira Fade, we see a Lucio Amp, right? We see a Monkey Bubble. Critical, yeah? So we see a lot of cooldowns used just for this ball going in, which means that now our Zen has nothing to be afraid of. Now our Zen can take his Brig, walk inside, kill this Lucio, kill this Moira, D.Va can fly in as well, fight them. Sombra can just walk forward free firing. As long as Tracer doesn't get hacked, we're super happy in this position, right? That's the way that the Brig Zen comp has to play into the Lucio Moira. They have to play very aggressive. They have to disrupt that opening cycle, especially because it is the opening fight. Neither team has the ultimates, yeah? So that's the way that we want to see the Brig Zen play. Because if we allow Justice to play their default playstyle, where they do the type of rotation, get to point, blah, 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 Justice will build the ults, they'll start forcing point before Fuel build any ults of their own. So we need to take an aggressive fight. We cannot allow the enemy team's passive advantage to turn into a big enough advantage for them to win a fight. Yeah. So I don't know why we see Fielder play so far back. We cancel the hack onto the Tracer, which is great, but we have no one in a position to take advantage of the fact that Bebe has used his Fade. Yes? Even if we pushed in here, they Matrixed him, all went into peel for him, it's still a good situation for us. It's still a good situation for Fuel. Yeah? Because again, we're going to trade resources. We're going to trade ultimates in terms of ultimate charge very effectively in that situation. Whereas if it's this type of situation where we're kind of pressuring them, but we're not really committing on them, then Justice trade their ults very well. Because again, we can see Bebe already 22% to Coalescence. It's only going to increase as they rotate. Yeah. Again, they keep rotating around. They get the second position here. Again, not the end of the world for Fuel, right? Again, not the end of the world for Fuel. Because, again, what are we seeing? We're seeing Tracer take this angle, Bull's ready to slam, Backline's fighting here, spamming. We see the kind of issue here where Hanbin gets hacked, right? And again, not the end of the world for Fuel, because if there's one player that you're kind of okay with getting hacked and speed boosters on, it's probably your D.Va. Because again, your D.Va's not... She's obviously a good hero, but she's not really doing a tremendous amount compared to Tracer hitting the flank, a ball coming in and slamming, right? A Sombra like on this angle looking for a hack, right? Or a Brig Zen, yeah? So if we have one player to get rushed, probably the D.Va's good because she's going to be able to stay alive for a long time. Most importantly, she's going to be able to force the enemy team to use a lot of resources to kill her, yeah? So that's what we want Hanbin's mindset to be during these fights. He's got to find a position where he can pressure the enemy rotation and be close enough to kind of go in and fight, even like dive in and fight with the team. If, say, Moira fades here and goes over here, Hanbin can be in a position where he can kind of flank to the Moira. That's what we want Hanbin to be doing. But we also want him to be in the mindset that if the enemy team go onto him, he can keep them busy for as long as possible. He can force out as many cooldowns as possible. Yeah? So why do we see him stand in the middle of the point? This is what I don't understand. Yeah, you can see the enemy team get into this position. As soon as the enemy team gets over here, even before they drop down the stairs, he should understand that the next move they're going to do is come out onto point, right? Either they're going to catch someone on point and kill them, or, they'll contest point, kind of go in here, whatever, right? So there's no reason for him to be in the middle of the point. We can imagine if instead he's maybe up on this high ground, even if he does get hacked, he's still happy. Even if he gets demeched, he's still happy. Because for the enemy team to commit on him, demech him, whatever, it's more of a commitment of resources, yeah? We see the enemy D.Va flying up, maybe the Monkey flying up, right? Maybe the Reaper TP's up to kill the hacked D.Va. We're very happy in that situation, yeah? But us getting hacked on point isn't forcing out enough resources from the enemy team. So, again, we shouldn't see Hanbin position here, right? Again, the mindset of Hanbin, sorry, the mindset of everyone on Fuel, this is the other thing as well, is that everyone on Fuel, I know we're talking about Hanbin, but everyone on Fuel has to take a position, and we're seeing this from the Tracer, from the Bull, not so much from Sombra, just because she's had to trans out, now she's coming back. But we're seeing this kind of positioning from Fuel that means if the enemy team commit onto them, it will be too much of a commitment of resources, right? So again, we can imagine like the example with the D.Va. If the D.Va's playing up here and Justice, even if they hack her and go onto her, they're committing so many resources for this D.Va that the rest of the team, Tracer, Bull, Sombra, supports, right, should be in a good position to win the fight because so many resources have been used on one person or on one unit, right? That's what we need every single person on Fuel to be doing. So when we were talking about maybe the Zen playing more aggressively over here, yes, It's fine if they go and commit on the Zen, fight the Zen. It's fine if the enemy team comes straight through and fight him, because it would be such a commitment of resources that the units that we had, and again, we're kind of talking about having, how many? What, like 4, maybe 5 separate units in Tracer by herself, Bull by himself, Sombra by herself, and then the supports, they're always together, but sometimes they have the D.Va with them, right? Typically in this comp, the D.Va's going to be split, so we can basically say there's kind of 5 separate units, yeah? We want these units all to be playing so aggressively, or sorry, all to be kind of taking these little risky peaks, you know? Break can be kind of down here on the stairs fighting this way, Zen could be spamming this way, D.Va can be like up here firing, you know, Bull's going for the slam here as they push, you know, Tracer's fighting this way, Sombra's fighting this way, right? So we see we kind of have those positions, yeah? What it means is if Justice decide to commit onto one of those players, it's still fine, because the rest of our players are uncontested and in positions to trade out on the excessive resources that have been committed onto that one person. Yeah, that is the mindset that Fuel need to have, right? Especially their D.Va. So our D.Va shouldn't be in the middle of point, right? I know we used a lot of words to explain that, but I really want to get that point across, right? Because that is the way that these Briggs End comps defeat the Lucio Moira. They're not ideal here. Still not the end of the world. Because we're doing well spamming. We need to kind of find some sort of solution, usually via a hack. We get some nice damage on the monkey when the monkey comes up. I'm not really sure why Fearless tries to come high ground. I don't really know about that one. I would almost rather Fearless is kind of pressuring the backline here. Like if we looked at his little roll that he does. Does he not see the Moira use Fade? And like want to go through for her? Like, counter diving the backline's okay when it's kind of like a... sorry, when it's kind of all on the same level. You know, when there's no high ground involved. But because they're in this position, he should know that they're actually fairly happy, right? And he sees the Moira here, he sees the Lucio here, he sees his Tracer in a position to help him dive. He should prioritize these kills, yeah? Like, this isn't like an early stage of the fight where the enemy team are coming in all as 6 onto his supports. In that situation, yeah, okay, slamming on the supports is great, but it's kind of a different situation because these players aren't necessarily diving for kills because they're in a nice position to force point. He sees his Tracers in a position to follow up. Yeah, he should go for the Lucio, go for the Moira here, 100%, right? Again, very, very lucky he actually ends up on the high ground, doesn't die. But we almost see 2 great hacks from Assassins to take the fight here. The first one obviously done really good. The second one, Fearless kind of lucked out, but we can imagine if Fearless was going for the Lucio, going for the Moira, they just came out Fade. Sparkle's in a position to either like come this way, kill the Moira, come this way, kill the Lucio. Yeah. So again, little mistake from Fearless there. Also here, I don't know if Jexay. Yeah, I don't know if Jexay knows that the enemy team's kind of rotating this way, but someone should have told him. Like, it's fair enough if he can't see it, but someone needs to tell him, yeah? Like, someone needs to have told him that the enemy team's rotating. Again, it's sometimes annoying looking at these VODs without having the comms. But someone needs to tell him that the enemy team's rotating this way. If he knew the enemy team was rotating that way, then... No, he can see them. He can definitely see them. I don't know what he's doing, right? He can see them 100%. I don't know if he thinks that they want to take a fight here, but, like, he needs to start backing up, yeah? He should understand that his Sombra, Tracer, Bull have all committed a bunch of resources here when the enemy team were kind of fighting, and that his team's currently in downtime, and now the team needs to back up. And again, this is something we're seeing a lot from Fuel, is that they're not recognizing when they're in downtime and they need to kind of back up, reset, right? So I assume that they, at least for these first couple of maps, they don't have anyone in comms calling this type of thing, yeah? But Jexay definitely shouldn't be getting caught here. The Briggs End should be fairly free to kind of back up, start rotating around, yeah? Again, not fantastic position for Fuel, but they should have been able to get out there. Again, ideally, Hanbin playing on the high ground initially means that either he doesn't die or that Justice have to commit a lot of resources to catch him. Yeah, and again, it's about that resource game. It's about how effectively Fuel are trading resources. That's right. Wow. That's so lucky. Holy shit. Well, unlucky, I suppose. Damn, really good. Really nice from Jexay. That boop really kind of has won them the fight here. But again, like we're seeing, if Justice are in a position where all they're doing is kind of standing here, shooting the enemy team, they're not trading resources effectively. Yeah? Again, the way that they trade resources effectively is by using their speed boost, their matrix, their bubble, to take these types of long rotations to force the enemy team into a bad position before they fight, right? If all they're doing is standing in front of the enemy team, trading shots versus a Zen Brig standing on high ground, their comp's not going to succeed, right? So like, I don't know why we see them just kind of chilling in main. They can kind of get away with it because they had so many ults, but we can see Fuel are trading the ults very, very effectively with them, just because Fuel are standing in such strong positions. And I mean, Justice just don't have a comp that wins from that situation. You know, mostly because Fuel have the Zen and they have the double flanker. Yeah. So if the team's just kind of standing here and the defending team's like standing here and they're just kind of shooting each other, trading shots, then obviously Fuel's going to have the advantage. Not just the advantage in terms of damage and so on, but also they're going to find it easier to react to enemy ults, right? And again, that's kind of the main thing for Justice comp. Is Justice comp is very, very reliant on the ultimates. Yeah? So that's kind of why we want to start the fight with these opening rotations, because if we're starting the fight with a much shorter engage, it's much easier to get value out of those ults. Whereas if we've got to come in main, use the ults to kind of clear a bit of space, start touching point, it's not really what we want to do. You know, I don't know how else to say it. You see them come point again. This is fine if I want to play solo to build Cole, but then I'd want to see them rotate high ground. Like, they TP the Reaper up. Again, scaring the backline is not enough, because you are just going to get... Again, Fuel will find it very easy to back up with their Briggs and stay alive if we're taking these super long engages in main. Yeah, Bebe doesn't have a chance to push onto anything with the Cole, but if Bebe was coming up here and then was using Cole from this position, then he can shoot whatever he wants, right? I don't know, really, really weird. I don't know what's going on here. And then they're coming back on point again, but you don't have the ults to fight it. I don't know. I've had enough of talking about Justice's Lucio Mora. I feel like I've talked about it enough. It's just sad to see them still making the same mistakes. Who coaches this team? Yeah, okay. Like, when we're looking at it in terms of resources, but like the way that Fuel play is by doing this type of thing, where they're engaging super hard, they're using ultimates to get in, so that each player has a bunch of cooldowns left. So like when Fearless goes in, like Fearless diving in here, he's used, I think the Nano is on him, I can't remember. But like the Nano's come out and Fearless is in. He's got full cooldowns. The Sound Barrier was there as well. So like his team's pushing super aggressively because they have the ultimates that enable them to do so. They're using ultimates to get angles, to get positions where they can take duels, right? So again, like we see the Mei over here fighting the Diva, we see the Sim over here fighting the BAP. Earlier on, we saw like the Mei in the ice block here. I think we saw, was it Sim and Lucio on top of her, right? So like the way that Fuel are playing is they're using these opening ultimates to basically just disregard any kind of thought of map control, any sort of like default sticking together, whatever, to run off and find players they can fight. They're allowed to do that because they're using the ultimates to open, right? So because they have the Sound Barrier, they can run in. Because they have the Nano, they can run in, right? When they have the Sim Wall, they can do whatever they want, right? Because when they get to this stage, when they're dueling these players on the flank, they still have full cooldowns, right? Fearless is full health, full shield, with his cooldowns, with his shatter, when he gets to this position, which means that he can do whatever he wants, right? Again, Mei, I don't know what her cooldowns are right now, but she's in a position to duel this Diva. Sim's in a position to duel this BAP, right? The only reason that these players are in positions to duel these players, the only reason that Fuel are in positions to kind of duel these players on the flanks is because they're using their ults kind of just like willy-nilly at the start of the fight, and then using the chaos caused by those ults to then close distance and find kind of little players to fight, right? Like, it's a interesting play style, and it does work too. It's, in terms of like attention management and stuff, it's a very interesting playstyle. It's great, and yes, more teams should do it, right? But in terms of looking at a Brawl mirror, and again, if this wasn't a mirror, it would be super interesting to talk about, because we'd be seeing the way that this works against like dive teams. We'd be seeing the way that this kind of works against Orisa teams. We'd be seeing the other team like making swaps to respond to it, that type of stuff. But because they're playing against Justice, who basically just got like 2 comps that they're swapping between and just kind of matching them in these little duels on the flank, but slowly losing in every situation, it's very difficult to find kind of interesting things to talk about on the macro level, right? Again, if we're going to talk about the thing that enables Fearless to play like this, right, is because his team is using ults not in some sort of grand like plan, but just to cause the chaos to enable them to run in, right? And again, I don't think they do this versus every team, but they're really, really doing it versus Justice. Like, we're still seeing Fearless die for it, but what are we also seeing when Fearless goes in? We're seeing how many players turn around for him, how many resources get used on him, right? We're seeing a Batplamp in this area, we're seeing Lucio, Reaper, Rein, because the Rein got pinned, right? So we're seeing the attention of, 4 players in this area, or 5, sorry, with the BAP as well, in this area, which is then enabling other players on the team to run down a Mei, run down a D.Va. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, it's not like a bad playstyle, but it's just not really something I want to talk about too much. It's great, and I understand it. I think it's the best playstyle in the game. I honestly think it is the best playstyle in the game, right? They don't play it perfectly, and there's ways you can play it in dive comps, right? It is the best playstyle in the game. I think it's the future of Overwatch. I think it's great. I think it's actually really